And we are live.
I like that.
This is a podcast, first of a series of hopefully a long list.
Yes,
a lot of podcasts I
sir.
want to do. But let's start the right way. This is a podcast in our brand new Uber Flix Studio, an automated podcast in Ottawa. And I am joined today by Martin Clement. Martin Clement.
Yes, sir.
I myself am Pierre-Olivier Bussière, host of Le Temps d'une bière, producer of Hoppy History, and one of the co-owners here of the podcast studio. But let's face
Yes,
it,
sir.
Martin, you're a friend of the studio. You played a big role in making this happen. And that's not the only reason why you're here today. It's also because you and I are long overdue for a
course.
good quality conversation.
Yes. Let's make it happen.
We
That's
met.
why we're here.
That's right. And this is a bit of a joint project, isn't it?
Of course.
I mean, you were there at the beginning, and you also had a vision to contribute, and you've helped our friend Jeremy, who's
Yes.
who's the other co-owner of
Yeah.
the place. So you and I, in a way, go way back.
Yeah.
But we've really started to hang out with the studio.
Yes, of
And
course.
now is the time to really get to know each other a bit more. Here's what I know about you. Here's what I'd like to tell our audience, and then we can delve a bit into
Sure.
this. Martin, you've been described by common friends as the nicest guy in Ottawa.
No way.
Yes, I can't remember any names, and I
don't
will
know how
protect
well
their
those
identities
people
from
know
your
me.
compliments.
Yeah.
But here's the deal about you. You're like the Uber networker. You enter a room, you make everyone feel nice and confident, and you introduce a bunch of people to others.
That's nice.
You're involved in all these projects, and you've been in real estate for, what, 20 years now?
Yeah. 20 years. Yeah.
With,
2004.
With EXP1.
Mhm.
So it's like you know everybody.
Oh.
And you have something like 80, 87 agents under your name?
So there's 87 agents in this office.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've got an office here downtown. Cedric runs his own show out in Limoges. There's RJ in Vanklekill.
Mhm.
Got Cassandra in Gatineau. James in Montreal. We've got an agent in Calgary. Another one in Halifax. So Sam's in Calgary. Mr. Moore's in Halifax.
I'm sorry, I have public safety now on the line. They're asking me, are you planning to overthrow a government? They're not being very specific. I'm sorry.
A government. Well, we can dive into that subject if you want, but I don't know how controversial you want to get.
First thing first.
Yeah.
What drives you? You're like a super social person, and you're obviously a great networker.
Yeah.
How do you learn to talk to people, make them friends, and start
That's-
business with them?
It's funny that you mentioned that because if I were to describe myself, I would describe myself as a very introverted person.
Okay.
I can still remember my first day in the real estate world. I was 18 years old. I was acting as a receptionist because I didn't have a license yet. And I had to place that very first phone call to a seller, a very easy phone call to place. It was just to book a showing. And I was just so nervous speaking with strangers. And, I understood something very early on is that even if you find something difficult to do, the more you will do it, the easier it will get.
No matter what.
No
No matter
matter
what
what.
the thing you're doing.
So, a lot of people have described me that way as being an extroverted person, but I can guarantee you that's not the case. I can go out, I can make a lot of connections.
Yeah.
I understand the benefit of growing other people's businesses. There's a good book on that topic called The Go Giver. Great book for anybody that has to work a lot in the networking space. But I love people, but I get my batteries recharged when I'm alone.
Okay, so that's how you work. So this is
Yeah.
basically the core idea between
Yeah.
introverts and extroverts. It's not so much so that you're outgoing or super shy. It's more like in which direction does your energy flow?
That's right.
Do you get it from people or do you get it from quiet?
Sitting alone, reading a book,
Yeah.
having a coffee in the morning, like that's my go-to time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, like I love interacting with people, but it's just that social butterfly that I've been described so many times as. That's not how I would describe myself.
So you don't really agree with the idea that you're super outgoing.
No, I don't. No.
See, the thing with me is it's a bit different. for the longest time, I was much more comfortable in a crowd of people
Okay.
where I could be sort of the entertainer.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
cracking a few jokes, telling
Yeah.
stories, because I'm a storyteller.
Let me
right.
turn this thing off. Sorry.
What's that thing?
That thing, it makes a lot of noise.
Goddamn cell phones.
It's connected to the internet. So let's cut off its connection.
Let's just
And then it won't make any more noise.
yes. Let's
Sorry about that.
outroot it. Let's be free of it. The cell phone has been described by the Italian intellectual Umberto Eco as the first time the human being submits himself willingly to jail.
Wow.
Think about that for a second and let that sink in if you have any wobbles or worries about
Yeah.
your actual freedom of thought.
Yeah.
The cell phone is not your friend.
No, definitely
Because
not.
obviously it comes with the infrastructure, the ecosystem of distractions
Yeah.
that's making a multi-billion-dollar industry. Wow, that was such a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But there were a couple of things that, yeah,
It's an adult pacifier.
you could say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is so sinister. But going back to more hopeful things. So the way that you approach people and the way that I used to approach people are like polar opposites. I used to get my energy from energizing others,
Yeah.
from entertaining others, and then I completely changed, but very gradually over time. And now being in a crowd of people with everyone talking to each other, even like just 5 people, I find that draining.
Really?
And I feel much more present in a one-on-one conversation, like a podcast, like really slow conversation,
Yes.
but deep questions and no pressure.
One thing that I noticed about podcasting and also the other subject we were talking about before, cell phones, is that it's one of the only times where I'm interacting with a friend or maybe somebody new where it's totally rude to have your cell phone go off and buzz. So
right.
you shut it off,
Yeah.
right? Even if when I'm having dinner with a close friend or even with my girlfriend, your phone is still on.
No, I just shut it off. Yeah,
You just shut it off.
No,
So
I just
when I podcast with a guest, I do make a point of
yeah,
shutting off the cell phone, and I don't get distracted by it because I'm locked into this
Yeah.
thing that we're doing, this conversation.
Yeah.
I know the cameras are rolling. I know that we're trying to make it interesting for
Yeah.
people. So it's one of the times that I feel like having the best conversation is on a podcast.
Yeah, I think part of it is that you know that people are going to listen, so it makes you by default more accountable and brings out, I don't know, your real character because people are going to pay attention, so you're more self-conscious. But at the same time, the fact that you're isolated, that you can hear yourself and that you're kind of put into this
Yeah.
audio tunnel
Yes.
makes you so much more in the present moment.
Definitely.
You're so much more focused on the other because I can hear you better through the
Yeah.
headphones, and that's just one thing.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I find with cell phones is that picking up on what you said about this being rude, to have it on the table.
Yeah.
Doing a podcast makes you realize how rude it is to use your cell phone in front of anyone
True.
at any time.
Yeah.
And I was shocked by that when I visited a friend who had just gone back from Europe, bought this super big, huge mansion, really nice,
Yeah.
very generous person. He threw a huge party with tons of different cocktails
Yeah.
and a lot of interesting beers we tried out, lots of new friends. But he had this one rule. And it wasn't like, don't be on your cell phone when you chat with me. No. At the very entrance in the lobby, he said, hey guys, I have a special rule. I have a box in there. And I need you to put your cell phone in the box.
Yeah.
Like take your shoes off and your cell phone.
Yes.
Like for him, it was the same category of personal hygiene. And he was like, please, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but in my house, I need you to put your cell phone
course.
in the box.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
It was the first person who ever asked that, and people found it difficult. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And others were like, really? No, I can't put my cell phone in there because in a way, the cell phone has become the wallet.
Yeah.
It's become the connection you have with the entire world. It's
That's
become
right.
your identity, but it's also become a drug. Like
Yeah.
we all know how addictive it is. We just don't want to face it.
Yes. Are you
But-
a Star Trek fan?
No, but I could be, depending on your argument.
Are you familiar with the race called the Borg?
No,
So they're a cyborg.
of course they are.
Yeah, of course. And they crave to be one with the hive mind. And whenever they get disconnected, they get very disoriented. They get, I guess you could call it sort of like a depression. They get very,
They get a craving.
yeah, they get a craving to be connected back to the hive. They're lost without the hive.
So
And I think that-
basically like entitled teenagers.
Yes.
Or the vast majority of us, for that matter.
Yeah, like the most of us that are addicted to our cell phones and
Yeah.
and the connectivity that comes with it. I'll admit that whenever I'm away from my phone for a few hours, I'm worried. I'm like, okay, was
Yeah.
my mom trying to reach me, or my dad, or my girlfriend?
What did I miss?
Is my kid okay? You know, is everything good? And it's so difficult to get disconnected now. But I remember in the 90s, I was born in 85, like I would go out and play with my friends. You know, I'd leave home at 4:30 and then I would be back at night at 9:30, and, you know, everybody was okay. There was no like anxiety about it, you know?
In our childhood, I think as a 12-year-old kid, you could still be amazed by the simple idea of building a fort with branches in the woods.
Of course.
But kids at 12-year-old, at 10-year-old, they're like completely jaded. There's nothing new because they've already seen all the video games.
That's true.
They have super high standards about anything.
Yeah.
Their standards about the virtual world are high. So imagine their standards about the world. Imagine their capacity for bitterness. At
Yes.
12 years old, they've already seen everything.
Yeah.
They don't need to study. Everything's on ChatGPT. They don't know how to pay attention to people. All their interactions are virtual.
Yes.
And of course, I exaggerate, but you understand the part of
Of
it that
course.
isn't exaggerated. So you, as a real estate agent, do you notice if the people you talk to, your clients, sellers and buyers, do you think they notice an awful lot if you stop looking at them and just for a tiny second look at your cell phone?
Oh, so that's one of the rules that I have, and
No looking.
the agents that I coach, when I coach them on their first listing appointment or the appointment they're going to go on, one of the first things that you do when you walk into somebody's home, when you're there to evaluate the property, is that you make sure to put your phone on airplane mode, and you make sure that the clients see you do it.
You
And
make a point of it.
You make a point. It's like, hey, right on, thanks for having me. Quickly, let me just put my phone on airplane mode. I'll be,
Yeah.
I'll be concentrated on you guys for the next
So
hour.
that's like rule number one.
For me, it's something that, I've built a habit out of doing that. I think it's important. I mean, those people are there to talk about the biggest investment that they've made in their life up to that point. And I think you owe it to them to be 100% focused when you're there. I think the clients appreciate it. On the competitive aspect side, I think it probably sets you apart from the competitor that was looking at their phone the entire time. The nature of the industry is such that it might not be possible to do that every single time, because you might be negotiating an offer.
What if you have to sell a house in the next
30
I don't know.
minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, there will be exception to the rules, but that would be the one that if you're negotiating something actively at that moment. But on most evenings, you could probably get away with shutting off your phone there for a 45-minute to a 1-hour consultation with a client. And I think that when the clients see that, they really they appreciate it.
Well, I'd call it, a rule of basic common decency, but it's easy to forget, right?
Yes.
Now, the big question is, because you're also a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've mentored over 80 agents.
Mm-hmm.
Still doing it, by the way.
Yeah.
And what would be your advice to someone who starts doing sales?
So not real estate, just sales?
Real estate sales, and if you feel comfortable, sales. And I ask you this because I know how you talk to people.
Yeah.
Our listeners don't know as much, but I know that there is a way you're doing this.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear more about it because I think it's going to be very relevant.
So whatever industry that you're in, you need to understand something. We're talking about the sales industry, but I think that everybody's in sales. You own a podcast studio, but you're in sales. You need to find clients. You're a dentist. You open up your dental clinic. You're in sales, right? Whatever you're doing, everybody's in sales. And for me, the only way that I know how to sell is based off of relationships. So I can't teach you how to do optimize SEO. I can't teach you how to create the perfect Facebook ad. But what I can teach you is that there are people around you that want to support your business. And for me, the biggest source of referrals have been the people that I've gotten closest to in the industry. My industry is such that I need help from mortgage brokers. I need help from property managers. I need help from moving companies. And those three industries that I just named, I make a point of referring them business. And then in return, there's business that comes back. It can never be expected, but trust me, it will happen.
Does it help that you make a point of saying that it's not expected for them to return the favor?
That's the way I approach it. I know some other coaches will say, hey, I've sent you a client, send me a client. I'd say that, if you're going to send a mortgage broker 15 clients and then nothing's going to come back your way, maybe at that point you have that conversation and you say, hey, bud, I'd love to continue to work together. But at some point, is there a client that you think might be looking to buy or sell property? So I'd say build relationships with adjacent industries. So for the podcast studio, I would say probably find some people that are doing SEO, find influencers, find people that are operating in the same realm, other photographers, that might not own a podcast studio. So that would be my recommendation, is to build relationships with industries that are adjacent to yours.
Marketing agencies as well.
Marketing agencies.
Real estate agents. I don't know if you happen to know a few.
I know a few agents, yes.
What I'm hearing from this is the whole idea of the private sector being a zero-sum game is a bit false. Because the reality is, if you have a business, you need to operate in an environment where you're going to need services from other businesses that aren't your competition.
Yes.
And the vast majority of businesses are not your competition. So you're always in a position where you can help one another.
Well, that's another thing. I'll throw another wrench in our conversation.
Please do. There's never enough wrenches.
I say this often. A few of my students have gotten tired of me saying this. I say that the number one tool that you have in your toolbox as a realtor is the relationship you have with other realtors.
Why is that?
Because it's such an industry that is dependent on collaboration between agents across multiple brokerages. So the relationship I have with an agent at Remax is super important, because when I'm going to bring him a qualified buyer to see his property and he's representing the seller, he knows that Martin Clement does his due diligence, works with respectable people that have spoken with the bank. My word is my bond. And if I say, hey, this guy's
That's
good,
it right there.
is good to buy this house. He loves it. We have to look at a few things. We have to do an inspection. He knows that I'm not bullshitting, right? He knows that I'm coming from a certain spot, that he can trust me. And the relationship I have with other realtors in the industry is also super important, whether I'm representing a seller or a buyer. So it's important to get along in your industry. A lot of people use words like cutthroat,
sharks.
But
there must be some truth to it. There must be a certain proportion of realtors
there is
in Ottawa and other places.
Definitely.
And it has to be more than just 5%, because how often you hear of bad treatment.
Yes.
And there's no point in putting a real percentage, but there has to be a chunk. It has
there
to
are
be
some.
a good portion.
I can tell you some agents that I have great relationships with. I could, share a few, very small amount that I don't have a great relationship with.
Well, that's good.
Because that trust, was lost on their end. I just don't like using words like this industry is cutthroat. I don't know if you know a bit about neurolinguistic programming. Oh, yeah.
This is a way of using language to reprogram ideas.
Yeah. So I have one of my friends that always talked about his bad luck.
Actually, let me rephrase, because this is super important for the rest of the conversation. It's a way of using language to reframe beliefs.
Yes.
So it's more than ideas, because ideas you can have them but not be convinced by them.
Yeah.
But beliefs, This is a whole new level.
Yes, definitely. So whatever words that you use will shape the way you think, and the way you think will shape your actions. So this particular friend and a colleague would always talk about his bad luck. Would always talk about this stuff happens to me.
I could see where this is going because
You know.
he's a victim. It's never his fault.
Yeah.
There's no accountability.
No
here.
longer a victim, because we had a good conversation about that type of language, and on a dime, his life turned around.
Really?
Oh yeah, and it was like, listen, you got to stop saying that because that's not true. Whatever's happening is because you did this, so this is happening.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we switch that around.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that you have a better outlook on life, and we'll see where things go. And then
Overnight.
yeah, well, I mean, 3-4 months, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're
In the lifespan of a human being, it's still pretty fast.
yeah, let's say somebody's in $20,000-$30,000 worth
Yeah.
of credit card debt. It's like it's not going to clear up overnight.
No, of course.
But I mean, if you start making the right choices, you could be out of that hole, you know, within 4 or 5 months.
That's another good book for our listeners. Saying that because you used to do a podcast on book reviews. Small habits add up quickly, and a whole lot in the long term. There's this book called Atomic Habits. I have never read it because I have too many entrepreneur friends who have
Quoted it.
hammered my head to death with it, saying it's really, really good. And I feel like I don't need to hear it. I just need to know that atomic habits add up in the future. In the
Yeah.
long term, it makes a big difference. And that's what it is. Like, pick up one thing. This is something that Jordan Peterson famously said. You all know what you're doing that's wrong. You just don't want to change it. My words, but his beliefs, right? And I think that's one of the truest thing that he's ever said, because some of what he says has been deemed to be controversial. But that sentence right there deeply echoes in me.
Say it again.
We all know what we're doing that's wrong, that we should correct. And he
Of
said,
course.
if you want to improve yourself, pick up the one thing that you like the less about yourself and change it.
Yes.
This isn't exactly his words, but that's more or less the message. Find one thing that you're doing that you don't like or
Yeah.
that makes you feel bad about yourself,
Yes.
and stop doing it.
Yes.
And the point of the story is your anxiety, your suffering comes from you knowing that you shouldn't do something. You know it really well,
Yeah.
but you still do it anyways. It's like, I don't know, eating. This is my advice. I eat at least one bag of chips per week.
Oh, nice. What
Yeah, I
type?
know.
What type? Miss Vicky.
The crème sure et onion, sour cream and onions.
Okay. Okay.
But sometimes I'm just really stupid. I buy a bag,
Yeah.
I empty it completely in 1 hour, and then I have a heartburn for like 12 hours because I'm stupid like that. This is something I don't like doing, but I keep doing it. Okay, so it's one of those things.
Yeah.
But this is, on the funny side of the
Yes.
equation. There are some things that are just so much worse, like lying to people,
Yes.
or like getting to bed at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that going to bed at consistent hours
Yes.
and getting up fairly early in the morning. I'm not saying
Yeah.
cause yourself too much suffering, but 6, 7, or 8, still pretty early.
Yes.
Like there's a certain order that you can do that broadens your ability to have or to generate meaning in your life.
Of course. It's so useful for the human being to have some
Yeah.
type of schedule.
I think there's an exception to that though.
Okay.
The super creative thinkers. And when I mean super creatives, it's really people that make a business, a living, or a life from their creativity. So
Okay.
artists whose work is art,
Yeah.
there's something apparently in not having a structure that is super conducive to creativity. Or rather, creativity doesn't really lend itself to be bound by limits.
Okay.
So there's
But there's a lot of artists, unfortunately, that have their most creative periods in their life when they're in destructive periods.
Yeah, and alcohol, unfortunately, is really good for inspiration.
Like Stephen King,
Oh yeah,
you know.
I know his story.
Alcohol,
Yeah.
cigarettes.
And he has an alarmingly high number of books about a tortured writer who copes with alcohol. Like there's at least 5 books that are ostensibly about an isolated, remote, tortured writer who lives in a sort of cabin, or at least in his own world, and who drinks himself to death because he wants to avoid his demons.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, that too.
Van Gogh.
But there's something between, I think, creativity and alcohol throughout history.
Hunter S. Thompson.
I don't know this guy.
Like, I mean, those are all guys that, sort of.
But Allan Poe is the best example. He died at like 27. He went on binge drinking. They found him dead and cold in the trenches in the city 3 days after he went on a large bender. The guy was 27 or 28.
Yeah.
But he had already written like some of the best works of literature in the US. But his work of literature is about suffering. It's about pain. It's existentialist. It's noir. It's very sinister.
Yeah.
But again, it's so good.
It's captivating.
But there's something with alcohol that favors this, I think, unfortunately.
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, that too.
Amy Winehouse.
The list is very long, my friend.
There's something to it, obviously.
Alcohol is addictive.
Yeah. Funny story about that. I just I like to go on these challenges where I consume no alcohol whatsoever, and I've done 3 of them so far, 75 days straight. So
Nice.
for the last year and a half, I've spent half that time off the booze completely. The first time I did it, what was that noise?
Me.
Okay, that's fine.
I clicked. I did.
Okay.
It's like it's a form of approval.
Okay.
But the fact that I've had to explain it now ruins it entirely.
Sorry. And the first time I broke that 75-day dry spell, I started drinking, and then I was compelled to go to my garage, light up a cigar, and drink quite heavily. And I started writing life goals.
Was it I vow to never drink again?
No. So I shared the writings with a few people that are very close to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, this is great stuff. My head was hurting the next day.
Sure.
But I think being drunk sort of left me free to write down what I was really feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think we self-censor ourselves all the time.
Well, that's what alcohol does. It removes your inhibitions.
Yeah. So, it was great life goals.
Can you give us an example?
So there was a chapter, there was like 9 life goals. One of them was like, realize that you're never, you have to be thankful regardless of your suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And I went on this long paragraph about, whatever you're experiencing right now, you need to be thankful that you are still alive.
Yeah.
There's somebody that you love that is alive and well. There's always something that you can find that is worth being thankful for.
Yeah.
And, our family is going through something right now, not to get into too many details. And I was able to put that down on a piece of paper. And I think that just, being free to let my emotions fall on the piece of paper goes back to that subject, like Allan Poe and Hunter S. Thompson. Yeah. Like, there's a reason why they were looked at as unique writers, maybe because they were free to let their emotions out,
Part of that is alcohol makes you care less about the consequences.
That's true.
It deactivates the prefrontal cortex. That's like the youngest part of your brain from an evolutionary perspective.
Yeah.
It's the one part that does social calculations. Like, the moral center of your brain is the prefrontal cortex. And that's the one part that gets shut down after a few beers.
Oh, and I've made some bad decisions.
Of course you have.
Because of that also.
However, you drink one beer with colleagues to try and problem solve something.
Yeah.
And you will be amazed at the ideas that are going to come out. I mean, to be fair, just because you have new ideas or ideas outside the box doesn't mean that they're good. But there's certainly an added value of not caring if
Yeah.
if others think that your idea is bad. There's a big added value to that, because most of the time, we self-censor ideas based on pure bias.
Yeah.
Like, I have some idea that you might think that my idea is ridiculous. Like, for instance, I might think that you think I'm completely incompetent in a certain domain, but I won't know until I've tried it.
Yeah.
And then if I tried it, well, at least now I know,
Yeah.
right? It's not just me speculating on your behalf.
Yeah.
And you could solve a lot of problems solution-wise in any big company if people just had a few beers together. Because Google does that. They have a place in Google. Did you know that? Google has...
A beer garden?
Not a beer garden, but a sort of office that is like a lounge where you can have a glass of whiskey and just brainstorm.
Okay.
It's not... How can I say that? It's not only permitted, but it's encouraged, provided that people, do it reasonably. So
Yes.
you don't go there to get hammered. You go there literally to problem solve.
Yes.
And Google has this really interesting mentality of, we do ideas if we can't destroy them. So Google is like doing anything and everything they can. However, they submit it to a sort of firing squad.
Okay.
And if the firing squad cannot disprove the idea, then they generally do it.
Okay.
So that's why they're engaged in so many things.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing in there, that's, I think, one of the reasons they're so innovative, is because they encourage that outside of the box thinking. And one of the way they encourage that is by having, access to a glass of whiskey. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they get hammered, but it's definitely something worth considering.
I've heard that writers for comedy shows and just TV shows in general, they will go on sleep deprivation in order to have
Start
like
hallucinating.
well, start to have like the wackiest ideas possible, And I've heard it from many screenwriters, listening to podcasts with those guys on it.
Yeah.
And I've heard it a few times where the writer's room will go on sleep deprivation, and then they'll start having out of the box ideas
Well, it's like
It's fun.
hallucinating.
Yeah.
Your brain starts working
in different ways.
very differently.
Yeah.
Like, the brain is basically in despair.
Have you ever fasted for an amount of time?
No. I've done periods where I abstained from alcohol,
Yeah.
and one period where I abstained from coffee. It
Okay.
was 3 weeks. It was very, very weird.
Yeah.
You feel like a zombie without coffee.
Okay.
It was 3 weeks. I was inspired by Your Mind on Food,
Yeah.
which is a bestseller in the US. And I wanted to test what the author had tried, which is, while writing about the effect of coffee, to stop drinking coffee for like 3 months. I couldn't get to 3 months because I
Okay.
needed my drug.
Yeah.
But that's me. But in terms of fasting, I've never done it.
Yeah. The longest I went was 2 days and a half, so not quite 72 hours.
But still, you're
Uh,
still starving by the end.
Yeah. So your body shifts into what you call ketosis.
Hmm.
So you're no longer using glucose
Mhm.
to power your cells. You're using ketones to power your cells, and your brain thinks differently when it operates off of that stuff. I can still remember driving around watching the rain fall, and it was like each drop was in high definition.
Really?
My mind was hyper focused. And, if you think about it logically, by that time, all the food is out of your system.
Yeah.
Your digestive system doesn't have any more work to do. It's
Yeah.
just on standby.
Yeah.
It's probably the first time in a long time that it's been on standby, since the North American diet is like 3 meals a day,
Mhm.
So we wake up, we break our breakfast,
Yeah.
and then we lunch, and then we have oftentimes late dinner. So our digestive systems are never stopped. But
Yeah.
if you go on any type of prolonged fast, and this is a short fast, 2 days,
Mhm.
a lot of people go for way longer than that. But I can still remember, like, everything was in HD. Every conversation was more fluent. Everything was more clear.
Do you think you were more aware, more in the present?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think
I think it's like a wonder drug.
well, I think it explains why fasting is so important across early religions,
Yeah.
even still today in some religions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in North America, for the First Nations, you often hear the story of a rite of passage
Yeah.
where you essentially fast for a few days, up to a week or more. Then you have a vision or a series of visions that goes with your isolation and your torment. And
Yeah.
then once you've resisted that, you've learned more about the world.
Yeah.
You've become more resilient, and now you can rejoin the tribe as an adult. That's one version of the story. There are other cultures, even other civilizations where, first of all, you had less access to food, so there were more people that were likely to get that hyper definition drive.
And is this like a coming of age thing? Like,
What do you mean coming of age?
like at most, you were talking about different religions, like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Is this like around 14, 15, 16 years old?
It's somewhere in puberty,
Okay.
but it can vary from culture to culture.
Because it is common. We see it throughout the entire world. Like there is a rite of passage.
And part of that is just prayer.
Yeah.
Part of that is just facilitating meditation. So there's a lot of people who stop eating for ritual purification purposes.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, you're familiar with the drug ayahuasca.
Yes.
Normally, before you engage in that, before you partake, there will be a period of forced fasting from 1 to 3 weeks, depending on your shaman.
Okay.
And the idea is you essentially do the work physically, and that helps you to do the work mentally.
Mhm.
And once those two steps are completed, you can go to step 3, which is the ultimate revelation brought forth by the DMT and the ayahuasca. That and one other active ingredient that allows you to absorb it. But the idea is ayahuasca, the actual ceremony, the real ceremony, not the one for tourists, is all about the preparation for the ceremony. And if you do it right, then you are thrown into an entire new plane of existence where you reveal your inner demons or you answer a question about yourself. Because normally that's how they set it up. You go there and they ask you to ask questions, and then they accompany you in there.
Yeah.
But there's a whole process, ritual, preparation, and it involves fasting.
Okay.
And it's true to such an extent that by the time that you take the drug itself, you have already evolved and changed. And one of the reasons is just fasting.
Okay.
And I think it goes exactly in the direction that you were going with this hyper presentness,
Yes.
if you will, everything being more in HD. But I think this is also something you get by removing yourself from daily distractions.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to my garden every day, and it's become a ritual. Like, I get up in the morning and I'm excited about essentially doing nothing.
Oh.
I walk to my garden. It's about 10 minutes. I spend 5 minutes in my garden and I look at
What are you
I look
growing?
at tomatoes and cucumbers, and I just look and I do nothing.
Okay.
I grow all sort of things. I
Okay.
have butternut squash, I have cucumbers, I have tomatoes, I have basil, I have thyme, I have salad, I have beets, I have carrots, I have strawberries.
That's cool.
I have all sort of things, and it's all growing super well.
Yeah.
But this is my ritual. And the whole fact that this is embedded in the ritual, that I go there willingly and that this is my me time,
Yeah.
makes my beginning of the day so much more smooth, and you could do anything. But I think that there's something mind altering in just setting up a ritual.
Okay.
I think you set a special moment to do anything that has a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
where you're completely there. And the simple fact of doing nothing for the duration of that time calms you down regulates you, and
I think
it relieves you of your stress.
it brings us full circle back to the conversation we were having a few minutes ago about the importance of having a schedule.
Yeah.
And you did say there is an exception, and there are quite a few, as we've talked about. But for me, when I'm following a schedule, it gives me so much more clarity
Yeah.
of mind, because I know, okay, I wake up at 5:30. I go have my coffee. I do my 10 pages of reading. Then I'm off to the gym.
Oh, really?
I'm off to the gym. Then I get to the office. Then I have to speak with at least 3 clients. And then I need to update my finances. And then I need to update my contact database.
This is so specific.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's my daily schedule. And there's a reason why I've built it that way. Goes back to another topic you were talking about, the Atomic Habits. There's another book called The Compound Effect, where small incremental gains day by day will make it so that it's humongous results, right? If you have a chocolate bar every single day, this is obviously a very healthy one, but let's say this was a O. Henry and it's 300 calories. It's not that many, but
it adds up.
A pound is 3,500 calories. So every 12 days, you're adding on a pound.
I'm thinking about my chips now.
Yeah.
And I feel so much shame.
So if you go from switching your daily habit of buying an O. Henry bar when you go to the convenience store, and you end up having one every single day, making that small change of cutting that out will cause you to have one less pound of energy every 12 days. So let's say that you're slightly overweight and you want to lose some weight. Well, that one change can make a world of difference, right? And the importance of realizing that your daily schedule will have a huge impact on your results in life, even if it is reaching out to 3 clients daily.
Well, this is what I was going to bounce back on, because I thought for those listeners over there, over here, wherever you are, who are selling stuff, who are in the real estate market, I don't know if you noticed, but you should have, because Martin just gave you the ultimate golden advice there. So rewind, listen to that, note it down, because this is worth something. This is worth a lot, okay? And the 3 clients a day. If you speak to 3 clients a day, the results add up, because most of them are going to say no, but they have your name.
Yeah.
And eventually someone asks them if they could refer someone, and they can just say out of sheer annoyance, well, I was contacted by this guy, so you might as well try that. And that's a victory for you.
Here's my go-to conversation.
Yeah.
I keep an eye out for stuff that's interesting. Interest rate drops. Maybe a property is sold on a specific street. Maybe there's changes to the federal government taxing laws that will impact some of my clients, because a lot of them are investors. And I always try to call those clients with a piece of useful information. Hey, Jack, did you notice that the property on your street sold last week? Yeah, I saw it was listed for $850. Well, did you know it was actually sold for $875? They must have gotten multiple offers. Oh, I didn't know that. Thanks for the information. Yeah, no worries. I'll send you the sold feature sheet in the mail. Then you pop it in the mail, and then you're always going to the clients with something of value.
So this is something of importance that you mentioned earlier in the show. You said something about the book, The Giver. But essentially, you give stuff for free to clients repeatedly and over time, and then that builds the rapport.
Yeah.
And they know that you're reliable. You've already helped.
Yeah.
By the time they need you, you've already helped.
And you shouldn't expect anything in return from all those conversations.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm in an industry where we sell big ticket items. I'm blessed to be in this industry. If I speak to 3 people a day, that's over 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Right? If 5% of those people send me 1 transaction,
you're very happy.
I'm looking at 50 transactions just from those efforts.
Yeah.
Not to count the people that will call on the signs, the people that will reach out to us from the Facebook ads, the people that will, go on realtor.ca and they'll request information about a property. So just being out there, keeping an eye open for people that you can help out. I was talking a bit earlier about finding people that are in adjacent industries. When I'm out in a coffee shop or at a restaurant, my ears are obviously open to anybody who's looking to buy or sell real estate. But now, since I've built a referral network of plumbers, electricians, insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, my radar for anybody who needs services is so much wider. Because if I hear somebody say in the restaurant, oh man, I'm trying to find an electrician, but man, I've called 3 companies, nobody's getting back to me, they're all so swamped right now. I'll say, hey, by the way, I know a few good electricians, would you like me to refer you? And then that way your antenna is picking up station 89.9 all the way to 106.9.
That's a big range.
It's a big range.
How can you continue your conversation with your wife?
No, so there's times to tune in. Of
course.
But the reticular active system will pay attention to stuff without you even focusing on it.
Oh yeah, and Jeremy, our friend, and the other corner of this studio saw you in action. We were buying stuff. You guys were buying stuff in a hardware store, and you were just making new friends all over. And some of it, can be as simple as just listening. But I can tell you that this bit about what goes around comes around, about helping out, about giving freebies. Jeremy, our friend, really took it home because he keeps telling me about it. So you've had a major impact on him, I believe, and he's had a major impact on me. So it's come around, my friend. Yeah. And now I own my media, which is Le Temps d'une bière and Hockey History. It's grown a lot over the past year, and I'm super proud. Man.
That's an awesome show.
Super proud. The show, as well as the website, which is the real sort of.
And now you're writing news articles for magazines.
That's right.
Wow.
And I really took that advice home because now there is no such thing as a client putting advertisement on website. It's all working together. It's all collaborating.
Yes.
And there's no such thing as a cold email to put an ad. It's more like, here's something I wrote for you that I think you might like to share. That might be good content that you want to share on your social media. And then you do that over time and people pay attention. And you say, hey, by the way, I have this new space, very cheap, and I can change the space whenever you want. If you're interested, just hit me up. Otherwise, we have another article on you coming up.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
That's cool.
It's changed the approach completely.
Yeah.
It's small things that add up in the long term. And for me, it's really, I found something of interest. I published it. I built a link for you. I wrote a positive picture of you. And now people are reading it because I built my website so that it draws a lot of traffic.
That's a great idea.
So now it's worth it.
So you reach out to people.
Don't tell me that I'm giving you an idea for a new business.
No. You reach out to people that have a following, I guess, and then you write an article on their career path and what they're working on. That's a great idea. I saw a landscaping company do something similar. They hired an artist, and the people that own the landscaping company, they would look at properties that they think would benefit from their service. And they paid this artist to go draw the house with a new interlock, landscaping around it. And then they would gift that picture to the homeowners. They say, we think you have a beautiful home. Our artist has rendered your property with a bit of an improvement on landscaping.
Wow.
Here's a beautiful drawing of your home. People love it. But now they see the drawing with the upgraded landscaping, maybe a bit of interlock, maybe a bit of flower beds, maybe a bit of, everything.
This is so smart.
Yeah. And then...
Because they've planted the idea. Yeah. There's no question of pricing. There's no question of whether they want it or not. Yeah. It's pretty.
Yeah.
And they know it.
And they might not get the call.
Yeah.
They might call another friend that owns a landscaping company.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the economic model of it makes sense, where you're paying that artist maybe... $60-$70 per drawing. I don't know. You could do 10 properties. Your marketing budget is $700, and if you have a 10% success rate, landscaping jobs aren't cheap. It's a $40,000 contract. So it costs you $700 to get one client for $40. So
there's a good ratio in there.
Yeah. The budget makes sense.
Yeah, it's a neat little trick.
Didn't we hop on a podcast to talk about the studio?
We did at first, but then you got super interesting and you started giving advice for free. Yeah. And I was like, let's milk that cow.
We'll have to do another podcast at some point, but let's talk about this space, man, a bit. So
yeah, that's right. This is the first official podcast we're doing over here, so it's worth celebrating. What you have, Martin, in front of you is the smartest guy who ever... No. The studio is fully automated.
Yes.
We wanted to do something that everybody could use.
Yes.
Without splitting hair in four.
Yeah.
There is one button to start and to stop.
One button.
just one. You just hit the first one on the row over there. It's red when it records. It's very simple. And we wanted this to be that way because we know people who do content, all content, any content. They're busy. They have other things to do. We wanted to take care of the hard work. We wanted to remove the nightmare. We wanted to make their day easier by making it automatic so that you don't have to change anything in there. The cameras, for instance, are already calibrated. They're already in focus. Same thing with the sound. And the studio is built so that you can just walk in, press start, and then share your story.
Yeah. And the barrier to entry is extremely low.
Nowadays, for a podcast, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you could do a podcast with your phone. Trust me, I've done it in the past. 6 years ago when we started, that's what we would do.
Wow.
The quality is like super low.
Of course.
But what I meant when I said that, the barrier to entry to use your podcast studio is super low.
Yeah.
I've told you guys to raise the prices many times.
And we decided to side with our customers. Evil
said,
us.
You guys are way too cheap. But man, it's like extremely affordable to rent out this space.
We want it to be affordable. Like, this is the place for everyone, essentially. You can be an individual doing a podcast on your free time with a very little budget, or being a big corporation that needs to pump out active messaging almost every day. We got you covered, whoever you are.
Yes.
And I think that and good customer service plus automation is really what's going to change the game, really.
Yes, for sure. So let's talk about the price.
Price is as low as you can say. This is shockingly cheap.
You won't believe it.
By now. It's very simple. You can rent the space for $150 plus tax per hour.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we also offer packages. So for people who are looking for a high level of production, we have one of our best-selling podcast packages from the other studio. We have one of our best-selling packages from the other studio that we're bringing over here. So this is 4 recordings of 60 minutes plus editing plus 30 reels. That's $800 per month.
Wow.
So $800 per month, you get 4 hours in the podcast. You get editing.
That's
you
crazy.
get a bunch of reels.
That's crazy.
We have done the legwork for you. And now all you have to do is come in here and share your story.
Man, that's like the best marketing dollars that you can spend.
Yeah.
$800 a month.
Yeah.
You've got 4 episodes. You've got 30 reels. Essentially, you have a piece of content for every single day of the month.
And it's very easy to schedule.
And it's going to cost you $800.
Yeah.
And even more valuable than that, it's going to cost you 4 hours of your time.
Yeah.
Because I can remember trying to think of different pieces of content to shoot myself for my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
When I was starting to coach agents, I would go out, I would film trees, I would film B-roll, I would film multiple takes, you know. Welcome to my coaching channel. Today, I don't like that. And you start over again.
Yeah.
And podcasting is like a cheat code because you're trying to be interesting, obviously, but you can just find other interesting people to sit in front of you and have a good dialogue with them. And then you can cut up interesting 30-second pieces of that 1 hour conversation.
That's how it goes.
And that's how people will find your content.
You know, on my show, Le Temps d'une bière, Hoppy History, podcast about the history of beer, I had a comedian come on show. He was high.
Nice.
And he was very funny.
Yes.
And he started to tell a story about alcohol in the Sierra Nevada in Mexico that was utter rubbish. It was complete invention. There was some truth in it, but it was complete garbage. I made a reel without thinking too much of it, without really paying attention to content. I was like, this seems like a good section. So I'm going to cut it and send it to my guy who made a reel. The reel reached 500,000 views in 1 week.
Oh way.
I got 1,000 subscribers.
Just from that.
Just from that.
Yeah.
It was just a crazy, stupid story.
You catch a moment.
I just caught the right moment. But this is our biggest advice here. especially as you were saying, for content producers who are really having it on the bargain over here, you can come to the studio and just share your stories, talk to someone as if they were a friend, which often that's what happens.
Yes.
And then they share a piece of advice, something they've learned, a client they've helped. And with the cool LEDs behind us, it seems like, I don't know, all those viral videos with the cool lights behind, it kind of really focuses on the story.
And you can see yourself in these this TV that Jeremy's set up. You see exactly what the end viewers will see. You also see every single camera. And then the feed that is going to become your eventual piece of content is cut up right in front of you, because if Pierre-Olivier is talking, it's going to switch over to his camera.
Yeah.
If I continue talking, it's going to stay on me. And then I think Jeremy was saying that eventually goes to a wide shot.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when,
So
that,
right
for
now,
instance,
now it just went to the
if
wide shot.
we're talking at the same time, then we get the wide shot. And if it's just me talking, then it goes back to me. So this is a cool feature, the auto switch. We're still testing what we're going to do with it, but essentially,
it works great. I mean, because if I was watching a podcast and it was being cut up the way that it's being cut up right now,
you'd be pretty happy with it.
I'd be super happy with it. It would keep me engaged, and it's 100% automated.
Yeah.
You only need to schedule your own time. I've done lots of solo episodes. Some of my best content has been solo episodes where I'm just talking directly into the camera, and then I've added some B-roll so that people don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
And you don't need to schedule a time with a producer. You don't need to schedule a time, that for somebody to be here. The only barrier for the calendar is that nobody else has booked the studio.
So this is completely self-serve. You book yourself online. It's very easy. You don't even need to create an account. And then you come over here. You have the code to the door. You start, you record, you stop, and you come back whenever you want.
Yes.
And for content producers, we're also here. We have me, who's going to be talking to clients. I've been doing my podcast. I hang out with podcasters. I know what it's like to start a podcast, so I'm here for advice. And I have some free advice to share if you want to get into that.
So if somebody wants to start a podcast, they've got a gazillion things to say, but they're a shy person. What should they do?
The best thing to do is to bring someone they trust, someone they have fun with.
Okay.
They sit them on the opposite side of the table, and they just talk to that person. The person doesn't even need to say anything, but having a friend who makes you feel comfortable and who can, I don't know, crack a few jokes once in a while, that's going to be a tremendous help. And doubt, if you're really shy or if you're not just used to it, you bring someone in and you start interacting with the person. And eventually you get so comfortable talking into the microphone that you don't necessarily need to have this other person to practice with, but it builds confidence.
Okay.
I would say when you have a gazillion things to do, that's a problem. It can be overwhelming to start because of your ambition or because you're just afraid of the sheer task of saying it so that it's going to be interesting to a large number of people. What I tell podcasters who are just starting is very simple. Write an elevator pitch, the 30-second elevator pitch.
For your podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your elevator pitch?
The history of beer is super important to mankind. Join us to know all about it for the time it takes to drink a beer.
That's good.
Yeah, it's one of them. I have a few variations. Hoppy history is all the history you ever wanted with hops.
That's good. Mine is build a real estate machine to fund the life you really want to live.
Why the word machine?
Because the machine implies that it's somewhat automated. Machine implies that you will sort of be able to set it and forget it. Machine implies that you don't need to be directly involved for it to run. Yeah. So that's why I call it a real estate machine.
Dude, this is why you and Jeremy get along so well. You always think about optimization and automation.
Yeah. Jeremy more than me. He's like, we'll automate it. We'll automate it. Like, We need to keep some type of human.
That's right. That's right.
Human
He
touch.
likes to talk about automation.
Yeah.
But then again, he's
next
right.
level. He's right.
And it works.
He's right.
And it's the whole idea behind the studio. This is an automated studio. We don't have a lot of these. I think even in North America, the epicenter of podcasting,
Yes.
we don't have something that is as easy to use as this self-serve automated podcast with literally 5 cameras on you that you can use how you want. And as you said, as you pointed out, very, very, very easy to access, very cheap.
Listen, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
You're almost shocked by how
it is
approachable it is.
the best looking podcast studio I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I know that it's the first one of its kind that's automated the way that it is.
Yeah.
All the big popular podcasts, they all have in-house producers.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you could have a high-level production
Mm-hmm.
and not even have a producer.
Yeah.
I mean, you're welcome to bring a friend that they could sit off of camera
Mm-hmm.
and pull up some stats for you on the
Sure.
go. They could e-transfer. They could airdrop some stuff to your laptop so that you could share.
Yeah.
So you could have that capability of having somebody in here like a young
But
Jamie.
you won't need it.
You don't need it, and if they can't make it that day,
Yeah.
your podcast is not kiboshed.
Yeah.
You can still go by yourself and make it happen.
And you notice the setup as well. You notice the colors. Those are very specific colors.
Mhm.
Colors that match the reels that you can see go viral on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Those aren't cheap colors. They're the colors that are kind of ideal to go on screen.
So let's show people the different colors.
Yes, sir. We have the classic white, very, very chill. This is literally brighter than all the other colors.
Yeah, I like
But
it.
at the same time, it's very neutral, very elegant. This is for your discussion about the classics, the antiquity, Socrates and Aristotle's and Alexander the Great. This is the color to talk about ancient history.
Is this going to be your color?
My color? I don't know yet. I think I'm going to go through. But I have a big preference for the big deep blue. This is still bright.
It's like a teal.
Yeah, I think the...
Call it magenta.
I don't know. I am colorblind in that I don't remember the color.
I would call this teal. Yeah.
Yeah, this is also pretty good.
This gives me like an online gaming vibe.
Yeah, I think you could say that.
Yeah.
No,
Very
this
feminine.
is going to be my favorite. Purple.
It's feminine.
I have a very developed feminine side,
Yeah.
and I fully own it.
And what about the front of the podcast?
Yeah, let me change that over there.
The table.
Where's the table? Table is over here. So let's bring some more color. I like to line it all up with purple. No, it's black. Red I don't like. Green I don't like that much. This very bright blue I like, but I'd like it to be all purple. Can I do that? White. The other blue. All right, now everything's purple except the space behind the TV.
You'll get it.
I'll
We're
get
close.
it. I'm very close. Thanks for your support, by the way.
Yeah. We're almost there,
I
buddy.
just need to just a few times.
We're getting there.
A few clicks. Okay. Now everything's purple. I like that because it's futuristic.
Yeah.
So I can see myself in the future.
It's actually blue right now.
No.
Yeah.
How could it be?
This gives me like money advice vibes. The purple,
Yeah.
like rich dad, poor dad branding.
So just let it rain.
Yeah, like the purple, it's like very royal. It would work for something like feminine topics.
Yeah.
There's lots of woman-led podcasts out there. I think this would be a good color for a true crime podcast.
Yes.
You
It
know?
also matches our magazines over there, where Jeremy was kind of on the cover as the hero of something.
Yeah.
Master of automation.
Evolution. I think it's produced by Epiphan.
Yeah. Epiphan was a great friend, a great benefactor of this podcast and podcast studio. They've done so much help, so much support. They really, really made this dream come true. And we're going to talk more about them later. One thing I'd like to go back before...
Let's finish the colors.
Oh, you wanted to go through the... Okay.
I think that...
You really love those colors.
Well, I think the listeners are probably curious to see the different setups, and we'll be able to use this as a reel. Nice. White.
Do you want to see some yellow?
Do you have yellow?
I think we do.
I think we should give people the
We should give people what they want.
yeah, which is see the different colors, and also that's the green,
No, this one's yellow.
yellow, and then for the okay.
Now, this is interesting. This is a whole new vibe. I
What-
don't know what this is, but this is completely different. What is
Yeah.
this? What
What
are
are-
we seeing? Let your imagination play. Take some drug.
What are
Sorry,
tho-
no.
What are those guys talking about
What is
with
this?
the yellow background?
I think this is for a podcast about the history of drugs. And don't get me started on this because, as you know, this is my favorite topic. Hashtag hoppy history. Because it is an interesting topic. But really,
course.
this is, I don't know how to qualify that. Do you have any idea? I
No.
don't know what I'm seeing.
No. I
But
like
it's-
the red also. Let's just give the people one more color.
I think we want to give you more colors.
I think we should
You are
just,
loving this. So let's go for the red for the shelves.
and then we'll leave it.
Yeah, red is interesting. It's also darker in many ways than all the other shades. I find
I could see like a Dan Carlin recording
Mhm.
a podcast. here.
something epic, something dramatic.
Yeah, yeah.
Now listen to me. This is a very important time period for the Romans because up until Caesar, they weren't really sure that they were going to go up the north. But imagine this. Imagine this. You're a very young lad. You're like 20, 25 something, and you're rich. And you have all those big ideas. You have all those mentors. You have all that money. And you're being told there is an opportunity there to vanquish, to defeat into oblivion one of the biggest armed groups there ever was. So what do you do? What do you do in that situation?
That's a good Dan Carlin.
Are you, I'd like to, you know what? I'd like to travel back on those days just for 1 second and see what it would be like to just be in a room with Julius Caesar because the guy has charisma. The guy has riz at a time where no one knows what riz is. I mean, this is a time period.
I like the Dan Carlin
He's
impression.
so great.
But you sort of have like a Daniela Bolelli accent going on too.
Who?
Another podcaster that talks about history.
Oh, really?
You don't know him?
No, I know Dan Curling. I must
Yeah.
have listened to his show.
Is it Carlin or Carling?
I think it's Carlin.
And Bolelli is he's another historian.
Yeah.
Oh man,
But these guys, if Bilali is anything like
very
Dan
similar.
Curling, then he's great and I admire him because it's quite something.
Yeah,
Not only to study and bring that material together, but to record a podcast that is so interesting in one single shot.
oh yeah,
I don't mind that it lasts 4 hours because it is pure joy. Because what Dan Carling is doing is he's putting you in the position of all those people he's talking about.
oh yeah.
And he's really bringing out the big questions without making you do all the work.
Yes,
So he catches you in the moment and he forces you to time travel with him.
and he brings emotion to the conversation.
Yeah, and he really puts your imagination to work without this looking like it's work. And he's so engaging. He's one of the best storytellers of our time, I think. I don't know if he's gonna ever listen to this, but he was an inspiration for the Temps de Bière. There's sometimes I don't have a guest and I just look to the camera and I let myself think through the implications of what I'm saying, and I realize it completely changes the game. Because there are times when I prepare and it's like I'm writing an article, and part of me presenting the information or the topic is going through the article, so in a very linear fashion,
Yes,
as if I was just too lazy to read the script, and I was kind of going through the main points. But then there's a point where it changes completely, and it's like, wait a second. So, knowing everything I've said, now think if it was you. Now, instead of just saying what I need to say, I'm engaging the viewers and listeners, and it changes my entire mindset. First of all, it's much more fun because you really feel like you're telling a story as opposed to saying something you've rehearsed for.
that's something I need to work on.
Yeah, storytelling, I think, is
I
what
think you-
ties the world together.
I think you're very good at that.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, you're very engaging, and sometimes I look at my past content and it looks like an infomercial. Like it's like I'm delivering a speech.
The key is drama.
Yeah, I'm not too good at that.
Maybe you just need more suffering and torment in your life.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
Just more booze. More booze would help. No, I thought about maybe hiring like a stand-up coach, maybe going
Really?
to do some stand-up, just to shake things up.
There's this wonderful organization, Toastmasters.
Oh yes,
It's like prep school for TED Talks.
yes.
And what I've learned about the art of public speaking is you want to make it easy for the people who listen. There is really a way to talk so that you ease the other into it. And sometimes it involves techniques that aren't so different from neuro programming. Sorry, how did you call it?
Neurolinguistic programming.
Yeah,
NLP.
NPL or NLP. Okay.
NLP.
So the way this works is you start a sentence and you make pauses in places that you know it's going to be so awkward if you stop right there that the other would autofill the sentence.
Jordan Peterson is great at that.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, well, he's talked to millions of people for a long time now. It's not just through his classes. It's not just through teaching for over 20 years. It's also through doing long-form discussions. There's a way.
He thinks before he talks.
And that works well.
Yeah.
I found that television told us that you had to be very quick and very succinct.
Fill
And
the
now
air.
he's seen himself. We've seen, especially with the popularity of long-form discussions with Joe Rogan, that we actually want to be in the present for a longer period. And it really helps with your credibility to take the pause that you need so that whatever comes out of your mouth has the benefit of thoughtfulness. But that dramatic pause hooks up the listener. If you're starting a sentence and you make a pause like I just did, what you're saying is that it's worth to continue listening. Actually, no, you're creating an obligation. You're saying there's a pause here. Why is there a pause? Right? So you're making the audience want to know the rest without telling them. And there's a certain art to it. It's like, I want to know more about this as I'm saying.
Yes.
I think that part of that has to do with neuroprogramming, that thing I can't pronounce. And the other part of it is just the joy of conversation.
Yeah.
And part of that is just your passion. Like, I think for you, find something you're truly passionate about. And you still may struggle with the added element of drama. But not everyone needs drama. Like, clearly right now, I'm into storytelling mode. This isn't the mode I was in earlier today. It was more casual.
Yeah.
Like, this is too intense to sustain for a long period of time. The question is, do you think you really need that to be interesting? I don't think so. I'm comfortable because I'm playing a role, but it could be off-putting for others to speak or to have someone speak in such a dramatic way all the time, right?
That was one of my concerns by putting on a character on the camera for my YouTube channels and my different podcasts, is that I was afraid that I would become a caricature and that I would be forced to maintain that caricature in order to continue to be appealing to the people.
This is why I love masks so much.
Okay.
Masks are associated with an identity.
Yeah.
And it's understood that while you wear the mask, you inherit that identity. You become the mask, right? If you wear the mask long enough, it stays with you, and it's hard to put it out. I was reading about this politician, René Lévesque. He is the politician associated with the first referendum. He was at the head of the Parti Québécois for a long time. The guy was physically unimpressive, but with a whole lot of charisma and enormous intellect. Short guy like me, but big brain. Not necessarily like me, but bigger. And put that aside for a moment. René Lévesque was someone who occupied the entire room. Everyone wanted to be friends with him, talk to him, right? He was a big person. And one of his late biographers said of René Lévesque that after spending so much time in politics, so much time talking with people, after enjoying it so much, there was no more René Lévesque. There was no more of his private person. That was very difficult for him to have relationships. All his commitment, experience in life His emotional intelligence was all connected through the public persona.
Yeah.
And that makes me worried about all those influencers. The more time you spend on social media, the more time you carry on that mask, that personality, the more it becomes you. So the more time I think you show yourself on social media, especially with all those filters, with all those viral type videos where you just look so upbeat all the time,
Yeah.
the more you do it, the more danger there is to your core identity.
Well-
I think it's very dangerous.
Well, sometimes it'll happen where I see somebody online, I see them, out in Vietnam, and like they're freaking pumped to be there.
Yeah.
And then the next time you see them, they just bought a brand new car. And then the next time you see them, they just got engaged. And
Yeah.
then the next time you see them, it's a professional photo shoot with their beautiful children. And then the next time you see them is at the coffee shop, and they look so fucking depressed.
Yep.
But they've put out that persona of always being happy, upbeat.
Yeah.
And like maybe he's not like having a rough go at the coffee shop, but it's
Yeah.
just like we've built this image of this person, and then you see them in real life, and it's like, whoa, what's wrong with you?
Well, I think that part of it is also setting high expectations on themselves
Yeah.
that now they hold themselves accountable to. Because you're sharing with the public, but you're also sharing it with yourself. You want to be seen that way. So arguably that's because you want to be that way.
Yeah,
But then the morning you do something that's opposite to that.
yeah,
You just chill. So it's like any adrenaline seekers. It's like I've known people that have been in Afghanistan for years and years. They come back to Canada. Obviously, I'm talking about the war. And they come back to Canada. And those that aren't broken, I'm not talking about people with PTSD. I'm talking about people who had a less traumatic experience, come back to the country, and they are seeking adrenaline. And they make changes to their life so that they can pursue that sort of adrenaline. And it's not just soldiers, it's people who have worked in big organizations having to do with security, or charities, or the Red Cross, who have worked in this dreadful environment, really violent and hostile. There was a risk to their life every day.
yeah.
And they come back to Canada or to Europe, wherever they're based, and they're like, I need more. I'm thinking about that term. I'm thinking in those terms when I think about those influencers who set such a high standard for happiness
Yes.
for whenever they hit their low bar. Because I'm worried that they think I've ruined my life now
Yeah.
because I don't know, I've had 400 likes instead of 4,000
That's
or
right.
something like that. And I worry about them and their mental illness. I think that a lot of those influencers have that added anxiety of having to suffer through the idea that they may be less than they artificially pretend to be
Yeah.
for, I don't know, algorithmic reasons.
Yes.
Think about all the suffering that could be avoided.
Of course. So if you are going to start a podcast and you're going to be podcasting, how do you sort of disconnect yourself from your online persona, or do you try to be as close to the PO that you are in real life?
I try to bring the best of me.
Okay.
So when I'm with someone on the podcast, I try to make friends with the person who's there and make sure that I don't put myself in front, because I get really passionate about stuff, right? And I may talk for a long time, but that ruins the conversation. So in many ways, for me, it's bringing out the best, and it's really trying to be myself as much as possible. So even though I love the drama, I love the storytelling, like Dan Carling, I have to hold it back so that I don't construct this mask that I then become a prisoner of.
Yes.
But in many ways, this is the real me. I like to talk with people. I like deep conversations. I like unstructured conversations as well. It fits my creative side. And I have colleagues in many other projects who would say, yeah, he's like a philosophical Trojan horse. If you let him talk with you long enough, you'll get really deep questions. That's how I operate. So I'm not too worried about myself, but I recognize the risk.
What's your favorite topic to talk about?
Drugs and psychology and ancient history.
And which era of ancient history?
Anything that has to do with the emergence of philosophy
Okay.
and the first signs of religion and the ancient world, that's just fascinating to me
Okay.
because of all the implications for the modern mind. You have hunter-gatherers who reached states of altered minds with plants and herbs and, well, mostly plants and herb, but sometimes toxins from
Mushrooms.
animals, shrooms as well. And you can very legitimately ask the question of whether the pursuit of altered states of minds and the rather difficult life of a hunter-gatherer
Yeah.
might not or might have served as a catalyst for sophisticated societies. I don't necessarily mean the state, but I mean as an added layer of complexity that is conducive to the state. I mean, just think about that. There's a podcast where Paul Stamets, the mushroom expert in the U.S.,
He's a real fun guy.
he's a real fun guy. Yes. I should have seen that coming. He was on a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he postulated the theory that there's a special kind of fungi that grows on feces in some regions, particularly in Africa, where the human being originated. And his theory is that exposure to doses of something similar to psilocybin, the famous mind-altering substance, continuous exposure to that over hundreds of thousands of years repeatedly might have accelerated and improved the development of the human brain.
Huh.
And now imagine what that means. It means that it might be the case that we wouldn't have our consciousness that we have today without that very long, prolonged period of interaction with those. But it's also separately, it's also more and more documented today that our ancestors at the very beginning of state building, of complex societies, you find all these rites and rituals where there's an element of mind alteration. We're talking about shamanic experiences with people consuming fungi or getting together in a cave and drinking a sacred beverage. We have all those references from the Soma and the Rig Veda in India. We have the Kikeon, which is a sacred beverage that would have been drunk in the mysteries of Eleusis in ancient Greece, that constituted one of the longest reigning religion ever.
Okay.
It spanned 2 millennia. You would have average guys as well as the elite gathering together.
And these are all different compounds. Like,
Compounds that would have been different. We don't know for sure that those were drugs, but we have pretty strong indication.
well, because I mean, some people were using the ayahuasca plant. Some people were growing fungus on ergot.
But
Some people were using straight up mushrooms.
we know at the very least that there are rituals associated with mind-altering substances, or at least the portrayal of the mind being altered at the very beginning.
Have you had any experience?
Unfortunately, I've never tried ayahuasca. I have to admit that I'm completely scared of it
Yeah.
because the experience can be very difficult.
So same for me. Like I've never had any experience with psychedelics at all.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people that have,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them speak of it in a positive light.
Yeah.
Haven't had any friends that have had any negative consequences, and they've all had like introspective views from the experience. I know a few friends that have quit drinking.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Same here.
From one DMT experience.
Yeah.
I've had friends that have quit smoking. I've had friends that have just become better human beings from it. So it would make sense, the stoned ape theory
That you were famous stone ape theory.
yeah, that you're talking about. I think that we're animals at the base of it, but we do have the capacity for introspection.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come often, I'd say that 95% of the time we're on autopilot.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen from other people that I've experienced with psychedelics, it does remove that autopilot.
What it does is it changes your neuronal pathway. The same way alcohol shuts down the prefrontal cortex. There are drugs like psilocybin and DMT that inhibits connections between different parts of your brain. Those are the known roads. Let's say that you have a vast infrastructure of ideas, all of them solidly connected together. And those links are responsible for your beliefs, your biases, and your taboo. But all of a sudden, you take a drug like DMT and psilocybin, and those paths are blocked. So the brain goes into a panic mode and says, okay, new paths are going to be necessary. And you rewire your brain with those two specific drugs.
Yeah.
It's been tested. They don't really know how that goes about, but one of there are two theories about psilocybin precisely. One of them is there's a specific sort of dendrine that grows a bit more. The dendrine is somewhere in the neuron, and it facilitates constructing new neurons. That's one thing. And the other thing is it facilitates
which they thought was impossible up to a few years ago.
Well, that's starting to change now. We used to say that all your neurons start dying when you're born, but now we know that you can build a few more neurons later in your life. But you can definitely take better care of your brain, right? Of your neurons. You can eat well, all that. We understand that impact a bit better. The other theory about the impact of psilocybin in the brain is it makes your S2 serotonin receptors more receptive. So you're more synced, you're more open to good news.
Okay.
So you're more, how can I say that? You're more sensitive to things that might not have otherwise picked your attention. So you pick up on good news better, essentially.
This
is a really good thing.
Does this last beyond the trip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that's the breakthrough here.
Okay.
Psilocybin is just like ayahuasca, as you were saying. You take one dose and it's a life-changing experience.
Like a microdose or
no,
like
a real dose.
Okay.
This is more than 2 to 3 micrograms. It's more than that by a ratio of 10, I think. But don't quote me on this. I'm not sure.
What scares me about those experiences and why I haven't hopped on them is because there's no off-ramp. Like if you don't want to be there anymore, you can't just say, "Okay, I'm out." Like
That's
you're
right.
stuck in it.
No, it's truly scary, and it should be treated with awe because this is the true meaning of awesome.
Yeah.
If you take DMT, for instance, people who have studied DMT and tried it and experimented by themselves, they have described it as being attached to a ballistic missile.
Yeah.
And without any warning, someone pushes the off button and you're thrown into space. Your consciousness gets scattered. No, it doesn't get scattered. It gets shattered. There's no more you. You have no limits. You have no self. Everything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you were holding back on comes right back at you. So this is scary. If you are afraid of being alone in silence, if you are afraid of being in a suspension tank where all your senses are coming right back at you, then ayahuasca is really not at you. I had a friend who went to this religious retreat in Quebec. It's kind of a monastery. And the idea is you surrender your speech when you go there. You accept to stop talking for like 2 weeks. There's no talking. It's just meditation. You eat, you meditate, you eat, etc., and repeat. And there was one of the persons there on the second day started shaking uncontrollably. The person wasn't on drugs. It wasn't like a withdrawal. And one of the leaders, one of the responsible agents, went to see that person and said, "We're going to talk now because you need someone to talk to you. What you're experiencing is pure terror." So let that sink in. If you're not used, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know your thoughts, if you've never really been alone, you haven't experienced consciousness. And when you do, it is earth-shattering. So this is but a glimpse of what you would experience if you took something like ayahuasca or psilocybin. It's really awesome in the most religious sense. And I think it's a religious experience because,
There are ways to release DMT without the drugs, right?
sure, but do you really need DMT? That's the whole question about those psychedelic drugs. Do you really need the drug? That means, do you really need to take the risk of being sick? Because that's a real risk in order to reach an altered state of mind. Because what you could do is you can change your habits. You can impose a calendar of, I don't know, solitary moments. You can do small changes, but there's no denying that those experiences created by
I had an
specific drugs.
experience in one of those isolation chambers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably went six or seven times.
Wow.
First time was not fun.
No.
Alone in there, it's dark. The water temperature matches the temperature of your skin.
Wow.
You've got like zero sensory input, right? So you're just floating in there. Have you tried it?
Never, but I'm not sure I want to.
No. So we'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't like it, you get out.
What did you get out of it?
First time terrified. Sort of decided to sit down in the float tank. Turn on the light. You could turn on some sound, and it makes the experience more bearable.
Okay.
But on the third or fourth time that I was in there, I completely let go and I started hallucinating.
Really?
Yeah, and
What kind of hallucinations?
traveling through space.
Wow.
And it wasn't like an imagination. It was like I was seeing it, right?
For real. Like it was there.
It was there.
Okay.
But I know that the mind was just bored and it needed to create something, you know? But yeah, I found that quite remarkable. One of my friends owns one of the local float stations, and he tells me that some people go in there on LSD, some people go there on shrooms, some people go there on marijuana.
Oh.
Yeah, and those are the real ones.
Those are hardcore players.
Yeah, hardcore players.
I'm not sure I would do that.
But I'll take you. You'll try it.
To LSD?
No, to the flotation centers.
I could try that. I think.
Yeah.
I think this is something I can do safely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice. There's a nice like a waiting room where you go sit down after your float, and you can interact with other people that finish their floats. I've been in there talking with strangers.
Just casually floating the idea by me.
Yeah, just floating it by you. And
Right back at you on the puns.
I've brought some of my my trainees in the real estate world.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't like it. They stayed in there 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Some of them loved it. But there's no pressure. If you don't like it, you just get out.
That's it.
One thing that does stress you out in there is the passage of time. You have no idea if it's been 10 minutes or an hour
Yeah.
or 2 hours. Did they forget me in here? Should I get out? Should I go check my watch?
Yeah.
You know? Did the place close?
Not knowing the time
Is
as
it
in
midnight?
itself a hugely worrying element.
Oh, and it doesn't take long for you to lose track of time.
Yeah.
You know? I imagine being in solitary confinement.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why it's considered torture in some countries.
Oh, it is. Definitely.
But this makes me think. I stretch. I do some stretching for my legs and my back. It's like 2 exercises, and I try to do that without looking at my cell phone. I'm
Okay.
just laying on the floor, and I get super impatient for the first 2 minutes, and then something magical happens after 3-4 minutes where I just start wandering off,
Yeah.
and it just becomes free association. I start seeing solutions to my problem. I start wondering stupid questions. I start being a child again, and I love it.
Yeah.
But it's what I find fascinating about that simple exercise is going through the full range of emotions that have to do with productivity. Because at first, this is not productive. I'm wasting my time here. I should do that. When I'm done with this, I should do that, and that. And then suddenly, it goes from this to what causes a flower to smell like shit? Is there a special compound that we manufacture in our gut through some kind of bacteria that's also present in some plants? Are there bacteria that we have in our gut that's also sort of in the plant that contribute to the other? Is it because the bacteria are eating the nectar, or is it the nectar itself that smells so disgusting to attract the bacteria? Like, who's responsible for this?
Why do you think of that?
I don't know. This is just a random example, but I become random. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think doing nothing, letting yourself be bored, not being afraid by it, gives you back your youth in a way.
Well, that's when you disconnect from these things,
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from the TV, disconnect from the media. You said you like philosophy.
Yeah.
You're obviously familiar with the allegory of the cave
Mm-hmm.
and Plato.
Yeah.
So the logo of my channel,
There we go.
Marty Clement, is actually based off of the 4 stages of the allegory of the cave, because I take people from being projected an image of what they think is reality, and then I bring them all the way through the dark night of the soul to the realm of what the real things are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Does the coming into light normally hurts?
it does, man. I mean, how similar do you think the allegory of the cave and the story of the Matrix are?
I think. Well, I know that the Matrix is essentially the story of the cave, and it doesn't matter whether the producers wanted it to be that way or not. That's what it is.
That's the
The
story.
world you thought you knew is about the projection of the real thing, and I think it's true in many ways. And the fact that it's true in many ways makes it incomparably more true. And I think it's a wonderful analogy, and one that might have been inspired by taking the drug, because the Greeks and the mysteries of Eleusis were going into a cave and drinking some special potion that was likely a drug. There's some evidence that it is a drug, but it's not completely conclusive. Let's just say could have very likely been a drug, we don't know, but still. And then the allegory of the cave came, well, a long time after the mysteries have started. So I think it's the allegory of the cave 100%. But what the allegory of the cave means for me is learning anything true about the world is truly painful.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, I mean, in the story of the Matrix, like, people are actually trying to kill you for trying to leave
That's right.
the Matrix.
And it's depressing to wake up to reality, because you're so much, in the Matrix at least, you're so
Yes.
much less powerful. And I think it's like reaching adulthood. You're protected as a child in a normal functioning society. Like, if you're, I don't know, if you're in a family that's doing reasonably well, wherever you are, there's a certain degree of protection you have that you stop having. And if you lose that protection from parents early enough, it can be completely traumatic. And at the same time, if you never lose it and then you lose it, let's say you're 30 years old and you're for the first time exposed to the world for the first time, it can kill you because you've never been prepared for it, right?
Yeah.
So to me, this is a bit of a story of rite of passage,
Yes.
a story of initiation. What is it for you?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it early on this podcast about when people build a story for themselves in their head, where they say, "Oh, I've got no good luck." When you tell them, "Hey, man, you're sort of building this story for yourself, and it's really hurting you," I think you should start to change the story around to make it better for yourself. Some people will defend the idea that they've got shit luck because it's too painful for them to realize that it's self-inflicted. And they will treat you as if you're a lunatic for even suggesting such an idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't go to murderous, but they want to eliminate you from their life.
I see. Yeah.
So I mean, it is a real rage in them if you suggest that, hey, maybe the reason you're fucking broke is because you don't take care of your money.
Yeah.
It's not because your boss doesn't appreciate you. It's not because he doesn't pay you enough. It's because you spend money on useless stuff. It's because you haven't improved your value in the society. And it's painful for people when you tell them the reality of the situation. And I'm picking on somebody that's having financial problems here.
Right. But
But the same goes for people that have toxic relationships all the time.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, bro, maybe it's not all the girls. Maybe it's you.
Do you think sometimes it's more like people are being attracted to what they don't like because it is easier?
It's comfortable.
It's comfortable to know the devil that you to know. It's
the devil.
I'm saying this in the worst way as I could, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of girls who had toxic relationships, and they were always with the same. Those few girls, I don't know all girls, but those few girls that I knew all had the same pattern. They were always with the same type of guy, and it never worked. And I also know of a few guys who have the same pattern with girls. And the one thing that I find across all those different stories is they're attracted by something that they fundamentally reject because it's what they know. And this is more comfortable than taking the risk of being surprised and being disappointed. So case in point, a violent person, any violent person. You don't want want a violent person in your life.
No.
Especially not someone that you will share your life with.
Unless it's somebody that's defending you.
Yeah. You need to be able to do violence and then not do it.
Yeah.
Except if it's really, really necessary. But that's a different conversation.
It's better to be a warrior in a garden
than a gardener in a war. Yes, sir. Well, I think this is another thing too, and this is something that we don't talk enough in education and self-improvement. People don't need to chill or relax or to become vulnerable. People need to build competency. They need proof that they can exceed their expectations. They need to have small victories if they're starting from a low point. Yeah. This is something that I take from Jordan Peterson. I think this is one of the most impactful things that I've learned from his shows or classes. The way that you build yourself is by a habit of pushing a little bit your limits so that in the long term, you're building your resilience. Now, this is my Stoic understanding on what he's essentially preaching, because essentially what Peterson is saying, the biggest danger you face in not becoming a better version of yourself is the accumulation of bitterness over time that makes you a monster. If you let yourself become very bitter over time, out of pure knowledge of knowing that you're not doing what you should be doing, this is what bitterness is mostly. And it's really sad where it leads you. This creates evil. Now, what the Stoics said in ancient times, this is a really old philosophy, is you have to learn to control only what you can control. You have to let go of what you don't control. What you can control, you must control. You have to take dominion over yourself. So this starts with yourself, right? The story behind that is, if you have control over yourself, you control your emotions, you build resilience. That allows you to be one block. That allows you resistance. The Stoic teaching is essentially prepare yourself for suffering. Don't expect too much joy. You don't prepare for joy in life. You prepare for the suffering that's going to come with hunger, deprivation, loss, powerlessness.
Loss or lust?
Both, really, lust or loss. The job of a human being is to prepare in a way to your death.
Difficult moments.
And death and powerlessness. So you build resilience on the Stoic side, and you avoid becoming a person that you don't like on the Jordan Peterson side. You combine the two of them. That's basically my philosophy. So I try to do I try to improve a little something about me or about my businesses every day. As simple as that. And my rule is try to do one small thing. And the moment, if I have done one small thing every day that improves my situation, the effect is that of a mosaic or the butterfly effect. Yeah. And normally it's like doing the dishes. You say you don't want to do the dishes. Okay, wash one thing. As soon as you do that, you're washing 2 or 3 things. It's like in the morning, you speak to 3 clients. You've already put yourself into a certain motion. after you spoke just one client, it's much more easy to talk to a second, third, or fourth client.
Well, I mean,
It's the compound effect, I
it,
think.
it took me probably 13, 14 years to understand that, because I would always be trying to put myself in like a Hercules effort.
Yeah.
Today I'm going to go out and door knock 100 doors.
Well, you did that, though.
I did that. I did that for the first few years of my career.
Yeah.
I did that. Then I got a lot of success. 47 sales in my first year, which is it's pretty good. You know, you can ask realtors, and in their first year, maybe they sell 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Really hit it out.
It's good average.
It's good average
Good
for
start.
that first year.
Yep.
It's good. It's good at bat. You know, year after year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back to those old habits, and like it was so like such a Hercules effort that I needed to find the bravery, the courage to aim low again, but on a more consistent basis.
The courage to aim low again.
Yeah.
That's very significant.
Yeah.
Why is it courage?
It's courageous to aim low because your ego wants you to always aim extremely high. And I think that it's more beneficial for you to set a realistic target that you can achieve on the long run. But if I told you what's your goal for today, well, it's to speak with 3 clients. It's not impressive, you know? It's not good for my ego. But if my goal is to speak with 50 clients today, you'd be like, oh my God, Marty, he's going after it. But I guarantee you that at the end of the month, when I've spoken to 93 clients, that's more than most agents out there.
That explains why it's so difficult to break bad habits. People that have really, really bad habits, they're starting from not 0, but minus 100. So for them, you tell them they can improve their life. What you're essentially telling them is go climb that 10,000 feet mountain on your bare foot. The first thing they should do is get sandals, and then maybe shoes, and then maybe they can walk 10 meters, and then maybe they can run 1 kilometer. Then maybe they can reach 20 meters into the mountain, right?
Well, I mean, it's we've brought him up often on this podcast, but Peterson talks about cleaning your room.
Yeah.
You know, as a first goal. You know, clean your room, and then the beauty of your room will spill over into the other aspects of your life.
You truly believe that?
Oh yeah, I know it.
He's been tremendously mocked for saying that.
This studio here is spilling out into the rest of the office space on this floor. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that have said, "Oh, when are we going to renovate the rest of the office?"
Because they've seen the work here.
Because they've
and
seen
now you're
the beautiful
setting a standard. This is the potential.
So beauty has a tendency to spill out into other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Have a nice haircut.
Yeah.
Well, you're not gonna dress in shitty clothes.
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, oh my God, I got a nice freaking haircut.
You know what?
I'm gonna go buy some nice clothes. You have nice clothes, or you're gonna keep on shitty shoes?
One thing leads to another, you know?
Yeah.
And I noticed that with myself, even on a very, very hot day, I don't allow myself to go to work in shorts. To me, I wear a uniform.
You're a better man than I am because
Well, there are exceptions, right?
I rock shorts all the time.
For July, I made exceptions. You can be assured.
But you're a single man, right?
Yes, for now.
Yes. So I'm
But you understand.
I still find it important to dress very well when we go on a date night, of course.
Of course. But it's not like you go to clients, no. wearing hockey pants.
No.
And what I'm going with this is dressing well or putting on the uniform is a complementary to the eyes of the beer holder, of the person who's seeing. I think that there's truly the idea of making it easier to interact with someone when you show up, when you present yourself in a certain way. Like you provoke images of decency, for instance.
Yes.
Or you provoke images of casualness or friendliness, right? And this is a small step. It's not free because you have to pay for nice clothes, but it's a small step you can take to improve the image you have into another. And again, it goes for a long, it pays dividends in the future.
Yeah. That's the idea of the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
In every darkness, there is a grain of light.
Yeah.
In every ocean of light, there's a grain of darkness.
That's why I distrust people that look so happy on social media, or that people that smile too much.
Yeah.
I would suspect that they're pretending. Maybe this is the dark side of me, who's less trustful. But I normally trust people who smile a bit less.
It's very Russian of you.
Maybe.
Russian-
Well, I did spend some time in Russia.
Russian people don't like people that smile too much.
No, I know. I was in Russia and I asked someone, no, a Russian asked me, what's one thing that I find funny in Russia? Is like, no one's smiling. And then the woman, a retired professor, looked at me with a very ironic smile. This is like Hiroshima level of ironic smile. Why would we? I said people don't smile. And the look on her face when I said that,
Yeah.
I wanted to disappear from the surface of the earth.
What year was this in?
I don't know. It was 12, 15 years ago. I was
Okay.
in a student exchange program.
Yeah.
At the time, it was all about Dostoevsky and all the likes. And the way she looked at me, it's not what she said, it's the way she looked at me. I could see 70 years of Soviet Union in her eyes.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me. Russian is a completely different space, culturally, linguistically,
Eastern
literally.
Europe as a whole.
I know more about Russia, but Eastern Europe has shared that history with the Soviet Union, right?
Yes.
Forcibly
Yes.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And some place they had it rougher than others, but normally it was a rougher experience than
They find
out in
people
the
that
West.
smile hypocritical.
It's part of it is self-preservation. Part of it
Yeah.
is 75 years of police scrutiny in a very, very invasive way, which means you really had to be careful who you made friends with, because your friends might very well betray you to the KGB or something like that.
What was the ratio? Like 1 out of 4?
I don't know. No, that's too high. I mean, the highest ratio that we know in terms of informants vice the public is 1 to 10. Think about that. 10% of the population is a stitch.
So in this office of 90 agents, there would be 9.
Yeah, and that was
a
East Germany, Eastern Germany, with the Stasi. That's the
Okay.
highest ratio. And it's insane. 1 out of 10.
That's crazy.
It's like, yeah, you have 9 agents who at any moment's notice, actually maybe every week, give a call to the local, I don't know, political police and say, oh, by the way, Martin has some political ideas. I don't know. Maybe you should check him out. And then over time, you lose your accesses. You lose your job. Maybe you go to jail. Maybe you just disappear.
You get a visit.
You get a visit at 2 in the night, and you don't have a choice. You have to follow.
We have some questions for you, sir.
Yeah.
How long has this podcast been?
I don't know, but I understand it's time to wrap up. Martin, this has been a great conversation.
It's 2 hours.
You're kidding.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Take a look. Don't we have a timer?
You're right, man.
Yeah.
1 hour and 52 minutes. I think it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I knew that we were going to get onto some hot topics. I had no idea that we were going to go so far.
Well, I still have time if we didn't touch on anything that you wanted to touch on, because I believe that we've touched on nothing that we wanted to touch on.
Which is why we need to keep the conversation going for another show.
Sure.
Next time we talk, let's talk about the real estate market in Ottawa.
Oh, okay. Cool.
All right.
Or we could talk about philosophy or
I think there'll be
history,
several more shows like that.
On peut en faire un en français aussi.
We'll do one at least in French. And I'm going to invite you in my podcast in French, Le Temps d'une bière. And we'll explore some of the areas that I haven't covered too much. There'll be some exclusive material.
So what topic would you like to cover that you haven't covered yet on Le Temps d'une bière?
The history of rum and how it's connected with
Okay.
slavery.
Okay.
And how it's a very, very dark moment in life and history.
I've been to Rome. I love the idea, so I'll study it a bit, and we'll get together in a month, and I'll have some interesting stuff to say about it.
Very, very good.
Good.
Martin, thanks so much for...
Do you shake hands
Absolutely.
at the end? That's good.
Even if it takes me away from the mic, it is worth doing.
Yeah.
Thanks again for being in us.
Are you happy with the new setup?
I'm so happy. I couldn't be happier. This is a bit of a dream come true. Part of it is being the co-owner. Working with Jeremy also has been such an experience. Learning how to do a business, learning how to talk to people. I mean, I am incredibly indebted to you and Jeremy. And I look forward to do more projects with you guys.
It's gonna be fun. This bugs me though. The table.
The line?
Yeah.
There is no line. The
There
line
isn't.
is an illusion. It's a social construction.
There is no spoon.
And I'm pressing end right now.
Cool.
Thanks for being with us, guys. Cheers.
Ciao. Bye.